Let's bring in now the Nationals Senate leader and also the Shadow Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, Bridget McKenzie. Thanks for your time. So the government's saying cost pressures, the need to ease inflation, labour shortages, it can't go full steam ahead on infrastructure. Why is that wrong?
Well, Kieran, you've got a government that did a big review of infrastructure programs and projects prior to the October budget. They slashed $10 billion there. Then they announced a snap, short, sharp review, if you'll remember, before the May budget, 90 days. Well, that is now 100 days overdue. And so Catherine King has just been sitting on this review rather than actually doing something about it. The fact that the Treasurer is now out saying that somehow the infrastructure pipeline is responsible for any potential rate rise that Australians may get tomorrow, or indeed contributing significantly to the inflationary pressures that we're all experiencing at the moment, is actually a case of misinformation. The infrastructure pipeline has now dropped down to, I think, $10.3 billion out of a total budget spend of $637 billion. So if you're looking for what's causing inflation and rate rises, it's not the infrastructure pipeline.
On the review, do you accept that it's a good thing to take time for federal government to talk to the states, given when you're rolling out infrastructure, it's got to be a partnership?
Well, absolutely, as it was with us. And I think the review that they conducted in October cut a lot of those types of projects out and smoothed out the pipeline, shall we say. But this review was handed to the minister 100 days ago. It doesn't take 100 days. And you've seen not just, you've seen the New South Wales Treasurer push back. We've got 500,000 additional people flooding into our congested suburbs and cities. And the Treasurer is saying, whoa, here, New South Wales is bearing the brunt of that influx. And now you're saying you're going to cut the critical infrastructure projects that are going to help us deal with that level of additional congestion. And similarly, just this morning, the Deputy Premier of Queensland has pushed back and said this will be politically and economically damaging.
But if we look at it in broad terms, you take government dollars out of the economy at a time of high inflation, isn't that what the RBA would like to see in terms of wrapping up or cancelling some of the projects that otherwise would put more pressure on labour shortages and more pressure on an already bulging construction sector?
Well, Kieran, this has become the excuse of convenience, right? When this infrastructure review was set up, that wasn't its task to deal with the inflationary pressures at all. When we look at the types of projects that were thrown into this review, you hear the minister often talk about all these little projects, hundreds and hundreds of projects. They're all planning projects. So you can't build a Sydney Harbour Bridge unless you actually do the planning and design work. That doesn't mean a shovel's in the ground, there's no construction workers flooding to site and bulldozers rocking in. They're a lot of the projects that she's looking at cutting, and that is actually going to cut in the longer term those congestion-busting road and rail projects that our suburbs need. The thing she's not looking at and not refusing to rule out, $2.2 billion for suburban rail loop, a derided project by Auditor Generals all round, no cost-benefit analysis received. Stadium in Brisbane and Tasmania, in excess of billions of dollars between them. Again, not subject to the review. So to me, it looks like a completely cynical political exercise.
The polling today has the coalition making a bit of ground. The Prime Minister's lost a bit of paint off the back of the referendum. Is it largely the referendum we're seeing here in terms of the latest survey and the drop in support for the government?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the only poll that matters is, election day, and I've been around as long enough as you have to know that that's what matters. But I think what the referendum exposed is the triteness of the Prime Minister, the fact that he really doesn't have everyday Australians' interests at heart. He's very big into symbolism, whether it's going to China, to time with Gough Whitlam, whether it is a voice over practical action for Indigenous Australians. And we've seen Australians are watching him trot the red carpet with Alan Joyce, sipping champagne, handling lobsters in Beijing, flying Toto at the front of the plane, you name it. This guy's more interested in hanging out with rock stars and celebrities than he is in dealing with everyday Australians' concerns, and that's the paint that's been peeled off.
On the lobsters, that represents a major export. As a national
Absolutely. No, the Geraldton
don't you
Rock
support-
Lobster Co-op, I've been there many times, very much
And
supportive of that.
one in four of our export dollars generated out of
job.
with China
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
So
Huge
isn't it good
trading
to get it
partner.
back on an even keel?
It is, but it's not to suggest that why was it actually not on an even keel? Everyone's suggesting that it's somehow Scott Morrison's fault, the previous government. It was that we actually stood up to China with their list of grievances, that we actually held them to account over COVID, etc. And I think that's something that Australia should continue to do.
Bridget McKenzie, we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate
Always a
it.
pleasure.